Are GLP-1 medications going to kill us all? Are the new Onglyza weight loss drugs, are these that bad for us? You've probably heard on the news and media, people getting gastric obstructions, a whole host of things. So I want to talk about that a little bit just because they've become really popular. I was actually at the gym this morning running at the treadmill and saw a whole, I think it was Good Morning today or something like that. It was all about GLP-1s, probiotic supplements, the medications. I think it's just a lot of bad information out there, so I want to talk about that briefly right now. What's my perspective on it? The very first GLP-1 Byetta came out in 2005. I personally was using them in my practice for diabetics shortly thereafter in 2006. And I've actually done clinical research on different ones in my clinical research company. So I've been using these drugs since, whatever the math on that is, 10, 15, 20 years, a long time. And so I have a lot of clinical experience, both on the real side and the research side. I think the major issues, these have become very, very popular because there's been direct consumer advertising, and a lot of people are using it inappropriately that shouldn't be using it in the first place, and that's the reason why we're hearing about all these bad things. But there's two sides of the coin. There's also this whole idea of the medical industry, and right now the American Pediatric Association has now recognized weight loss is a big issue in kids. Like almost half of our kids in the country are obese, and they're now recommending Onglyza, GLP-1 medications to be used in kids, obese 12, 13, 14-year-olds. They're not recommending these kids to stop eating soda and Coke. They're not recommending schools to remove vendors, gumball machines, whatever they have in schools these days. They're recommending a medication. So there's a lot of weird interests, political interests, economic interests. Onglyza, which is made by a Swedish company, I believe, is probably going to be one of the hottest drugs in the world here very shortly, if not already there, making lots of money. And so there's a lot of issues like that with it. But the reality is these medications can be very helpful. There's research with GLP-1s as anti-inflammatories for the brain and Alzheimer's stuff, as neuroprotective. They are actually FDA approved to protect your heart. They actually, if you have a coronary risk equivalent, which is like having a heart attack, so if you're a diabetic, or if you have 3 risk equivalents like blood pressure, cholesterol, obesity, or blood pressure, cholesterol, another third, rheumatoid arthritis, something like that, that's considered a coronary risk equivalent. You can actually use these medications to protect your heart. So they actually have a lot of anti-inflammatory effects. I've actually had some of my hormone patients with weight loss issues, hormone issues, who've used GLP-1s in the right environment, had massive impacts on their overall systemic inflammation, because ultimately these drugs affect inflammation. The thing about them that gets kind of tricky is because you can now get these through the mail, and they'll be given to people, a lot of patients with dysautonomia, patients with POTS, patients with hypermobility, patients with chronic constipation, with dysbiosis and gut issues, and they're given indiscriminately for these patients. Now you're seeing gastric obstruction, you're seeing a whole host of things. I will say in my clinical career of using this, I've had thousands of patients use this drug since, again, about 2006 to now, which, again, 15, 16, and 19 years. Yeah, about 19 years. I've had 3 patients with significant side effects. One was actually projectile vomiting. They just vomited for a week straight. One person had really horrible anxiety hit them. And one person with a little bit of obstruction, they stopped it and went away. But these people were being watched closely by me. They were actually had very complicated patients. And my other patients, I've not seen that because you start low, you go slow, you're very cautious. So I think the thing about it is that because these have become so popular, because a lot of people are indiscriminately getting them, if you have weight issues, need to lose weight, going right to GLP-1 is not the right thing. Why are you overweight? What's your metabolic obesity? Is it primarily calories in, calories out kind of thing? If it is, diet is huge. Are you inflamed? Do you have food allergies driving your weight? You probably need to do an elimination diet. Do you have autoimmune issues? That's where low-dose naltrexone can be very powerful. And by the way, naltrexone is now FDA approved in a drug called Contrave for weight loss, and the dose for that is 8 to 16 milligrams twice a day. Why are you overweight? Do you actually have a thyroid issue? Are you getting a full thyroid panel? Do you have adrenal issue? Do you have insulin resistance? If you have insulin resistance, your A1C's up a little bit, fasting insulin's up. Then having a metabolic approach is huge. Do you have dysbiosis in your gut, microbiome issue? Then all of a sudden working on your microbiome with antimicrobial herbs, anti-inflammatories, using polyphenols, which are plant chemicals that feed healthy bacteria, which is where the GLP-1 supplements come into play, actually, through Pendulum, where they're giving you the GLP-1, like Akkermansia, making probiotics, or they're giving you the prebiotic fiber, which is in the form of like bayberry, blueberry, cranberry, grapeseed extract. what kind of obesity you have. And I think where people are indiscriminately being given these drugs who have undiagnosed dysautonomia, which is ridiculously common, undiagnosed mast cell, undiagnosed adrenal issues or cortisol issues. A lot of people have certain degrees of dysautonomia and they have slow gastric emptying, and this drug can absolutely positively worsen that. If you've ever had gallbladder issues, this drug could absolutely worsen that. So I think the issue here is mass marketing in a world where weight loss is big business, being fed by the government, direct-to-consumer advertising, and people can get these things online now. It's a toxic brew for having the side effects we're seeing right now. So again, I've been using the drug since 2006. Bayer's first one came in 2005. I think these are the major issues we're having with this drug class. And this is the reason why we're seeing this drug kill people. We're seeing people have horrible side effects. We're seeing people have intestinal obstruction. One of my patients was like, oh, they saw online someone's, I think they said their pancreas or spleen exploded or whatever. It didn't. It's probably a hollow organ, not a solid organ issue. But ultimately, this is an issue of inappropriate, first and foremost, do no harm. If the use of the medication doesn't outweigh the risk of it, you don't use it. But that's where having them used by the appropriate practitioner in the appropriate environment and not indiscriminately prescribing these things. So are GLP-1 drugs killing people in the wrong hands, used in the wrong time, in the wrong places? Yes. But using the right hands, in the right place, in the right time, these are very powerful anti-inflammatory drugs. These are actually peptides, for those of you familiar with peptides, that actually can help preserve heart function, can actually improve insulin numbers, can actually be used to help neuroprotect. And if you have hormone issues with inflammation, these can actually help with that as well. So I just want to put this out there, especially since in the gym this morning I saw that thing on Good Morning America. It's kind of bizarre, to be honest with you. Too bad I couldn't hear. I was too busy running. But hopefully this information is helpful. I'd love to hear y'all's comments and questions. Sometimes people have different opinions, which is always good to hear. Sharing opinions is good. Differing on things is good. We should have more discussion. And hopefully this was helpful for everybody who has questions about GLP-1s and what the big noise. I still use them. I still use GLP-1 stimulating supplements, things that have these polyphenols, the particular kinds of probiotics. But if you're not getting enough fiber in your diet, you got to start there. If you have a horrible diet, you need to start there. If you're not exercising, you start there. If your sleep is horrible, start there. If you have high cortisol, start there. You need to start where your root cause is and not jump and skip 7, 8, 10 steps downstream. That's where people are getting in trouble, and that's where people are having problems called. So hopefully this is helpful. Y'all take care. Talk to you soon.